way of measuring poverty, because people think of poverty and you think of a lack of money. However, apparently, it can be more than that. In fact, it is more than that, and that is probably what this MPI study is all about. Could you talk to me a bit about the dimensions of poverty, as shown in the name multidimensional poverty measure or index?
Thank you very much. As the name implies, multi-dimensional poverty index covers different dimensions of poverty. What we are used to know is monetary measure of poverty, which deals with maybe expenditure and consumption pattern of a household or individual. But multi-dimensional poverty index covers several dimensions of a poverty because it looks in depth into the dimension of poverty through which an individual or household is passing through. Take, for example, we have dimension on health, we have dimension on education, we have dimension on living standard, and the fourth one is work and shock. So these are 4 dimensions that multi-dimension poverty index covers. And unlike the monetary aspect of poverty measurement, so multi-dimension poverty index looks at how an individual or household is deprived in any of these dimensions. So for example, we are looking at nutrition, child mortality, access to school attendance, and sanitation, for example. So these are some of the indicators that is attached to the dimension. So an household is now examined to see how they are disadvantaged in some of these dimensions. So if you are disadvantaged in some of these dimensions, then we regard such household or individual to be deprived, and that is what we call multi-dimension poverty. That is poor in more than one dimension.
Let me stay with you for a moment. And so, because this is a statistical concept, I would be guessing, it's an exercise, a survey. And first of all, when was the last one done in Nigeria, this multi-dimensional poverty index? When was it brought up, and how is it expressed? How is it expressed, the result of it? Is it do you say a country has an index of 100 and it means something, an index of 50, or that's not the way it is measured?
Okay, it was, just to answer your question, it was last conducted in 2018.
Okay.
This is the second one in 2021.
Okay.
And the difference between this one and the 2018 is that more dimension is added to 2021.
Okay, more dimensions have been added since 2021, and you've been working on this in the National Bureau of Statistics for the past 2 years, right?
Yep.
And the last one was back in 2018. You've explained that the one that will be imminently released, it differs in the sense that a number of other indices were added. But as at the 2018 one, is there a way that we can just grab hold of something? For instance, if it was a census, you would say, we have determined that we have 250 million people in Nigeria. I mean, is there an easy way to summarize the result of a poverty index so that one can compare with what's going on perhaps in a neighboring country or in the West?
Okay, as a National Statistics Office, the essence of our computing any indicator is for us to be able to compare it with other countries in the world. And that is why we always use the international standard best practice. And there is a fundamental principle of official statistics that we need to follow and the methodology. So from the last computation, the MPI stood at 0.257. And we also know that in measuring poverty, that's what we call the incidence of poverty and intensity of poverty. So, and again, number of people that are poor when you are computing indicators on the poverty. So,
sorry, I beg your pardon, Mr. Fafumi. I just want to get understanding on what you've just told us. You said this 2018 exercise, it had a poverty index, a multidimensional poverty index of 0.257. I don't know what.
No.
Go ahead, please.
What I mean is that this one, the 2021, is 0.257.
Oh, the 2021 exercise has thrown up the figure 0.257.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you happen to have at hand the figure for the 2018 exercise?
Oh, I don't have it here, but
okay.
I think,
okay. Help me to understand. What is that? What does this mean? That if a statistician, a professional, an economist, a data specialist were to hear that in for 2021, we're looking at 0.257, what does that mean? How bad is that? We're talking about poverty is why I'm saying how bad is that? What would be, what does 0.257 mean? Do you get me? I'm a layman here. I'm trying to.
Yes, I understand you, which means 26%, approximately 26% of Nigeria are multidimensionally poor. That is the meaning.
26% of Nigerians are poor in a multidimensional way.
Dimensional way, yeah.
Oh, okay. And from what you've just explained, this, since I was looking at this subject matter on the internet, and as you have just explained, you've been measuring 3 dimensions of well-being, monetary poverty, education, and basic infrastructure. I think you also added one other one. So actually, if you say
that is
just 26% of Nigerians can be said to be, poor in more than one dimension, I don't know. I didn't think that was a very, very
okay.
bad
What I mean is that you look at take for example health, education, as I mentioned, then living standard, and work and shock. So if a particular household or individual is poor in health and also poor in education, so you can see that that person is poor in 2 dimensions when you are looking at the 4. And you can refer that person to be multidimensionally poor. You understand now?
Okay, yeah, because somebody who has just had the situation you've just explained to me, you said he might be poor in health and also poor in education, but he might be a millionaire. This individual could be a millionaire.
But he's still poor.
No education.
But he's still poor.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah. He might be a millionaire. He might not have a school certificate to his name, but you get my trying to understand it. He might still have $5 million in the bank. I mean, sorry, he might have 5 million naira. You can't call that kind of a man poor ordinarily, monetarily, but you're explaining that it goes beyond that. It's not just monetary. Monetary is not the only way to describe poverty. You said that there are other aspects to it, and you've helped us understand it. Okay, I'll come back to you, Mr. Fafumi. I got to go back to Shola Afolayan. I certainly didn't forget you, and I hope you didn't begin to feel like that. But I just wanted to get where we were on this. Now, we are hearing now that the result of all of this study and this exercise are about to be released, right? I wanted to ask you, how did you go about, how was the data collected? What was the sample size? Did you go all over the country, as I would expect? Tell us about how the info, the data, was gathered, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I must quickly cycle back to some of the conversations that you and Dr. B had. Firstly, I must emphasize a few or highlight a few things. The MPI is both a measurement tool and also a policy tool. And aside that, just like you know and you have said quite well, the results will be published in a couple of days' time. So the result that you have been engaged on is not exactly what the results are. But we can say, just exactly as Dr. B has mentioned, that we have people that have been deprived, that we have been able to capture the intensity of the deprivation across health, education, living standards. Living standards includes access to water, infrastructure, energy, and also works and shocks. And security, because we've now included when people are, impacted by all of the security issues in Nigeria, if you don't have a stable environment, it does impact, of course, business situation and business activities. So we've captured all of those. So one, the MPI is not just a measurement tool, but it's also a policy tool. And I could have an extensive conversation on the policy usability of the MPI itself. Aside that, we cannot exactly compare the 2018 MPI with the 2021-2022 MPI that we have already. And in fact, if we were to even conduct another one today, because things have changed significantly, we have the new poll, we have the urban poll that happened between the 2018 when the MPI was conducted, and it was conducted as an addition on the human capital report. It wasn't a standalone that we have now, where we went to 109 senatorial district. We have the same set of figures, dimensions, and also indicators that we will now use going forward to track, the escape from poverty or people being, going deeper into poverty. I just needed to quickly flag that out. We can go on and want to talk about, what is the headline figures, how many million Nigerians are in poverty, what is the percentage ratio, on how that was arrived at. But, the technicalities can be discussed. But in terms of asking me what is the sample size, I bet you that's a question that you would ask this in general. That's, I would say, not within my space to answer.
Okay, let me stay with you.
It was conducted in the 109 senatorial district.
Okay, let me stay with you.
Please.
Thank you for that last bit. That related to a part of my question, which is the sample size and methodology that we just want to know about. I, accept when you say that. Look, we got a statistician. He can tell us a bit more about that in a professional sense. But you did say that among other things that you can use, the MPI for is the matter of is the policy. It can also be a policy study, and when it comes out, it can be a policy indicator. How would this interface with policy formulation? In what way does it aid policy formulation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So in terms of policy direction and formulation, what we have done after the MPI survey was concluded in February, we anticipated that before the results is released, because a lot of robustness trials was conducted on it, then we need to prepare for the use case of it. So we have what we have deployed that is called the data demand and use strategy. Within the data demand and use strategy is the policy information. So we have the national poverty map around, making sure that the statistical data is accessible to a wide stakeholders where people can interact. We have an interactive dashboard that addresses that. Beyond that, also people that are statistically oriented can go to the MBS, because we have the Poverty Policy Action Lab, that you have the dashboard that is situated in there, and also information that will be updated therein. Now, the next phase that we have done is capacity building within the state. So we have statistician generals and people that are within the Commission of Planning within state that have been trained towards in the understanding the calculation of the MPI. I must say that the MPI was developed by the methodology itself was developed by the UNDP in partnership with the University of Oxford, and specifically by the Oxford Poverty Human Initiative department within the university. And so it has a lot of rigorosity. The methodology is called the Accurate Foster methodology. You can check that out. And it's been implemented in 100 countries in the world, and is the method that is used to track the SDG 1. Now, mentioning SDG 1, what we have done is how can we make sure that in all of the activities that are being implemented to address extreme poverty in all of its forms, what are the policy directions that we need to do? What are the activities? How can we use data that is evidence-based to design projects? So if we have deprivations, as you would see the results released on Thursday, if the deprivations are high in health, is high in education, how can we make sure that, one, the budget allocations are directed to address those? And I'm happy to report, the Honorable Minister of Finance, the Honorable Minister of State, Budget and Planning had been very much involved in this process. And the Minister of State, Budget and Planning, Prince Clem Agba, had made sure that in the development of the 2023 budget, you see in the 5 priority areas, they have the highest funding within the 2023 proposed budget. You have health, you have education, you have security, and also you have social protection work that will be expanded. So that's the use case of it in terms of the policy. So policy in terms of designing targeted projects that addresses what data are found. The other one is to make sure that in terms of the budget allocation of resources, we make sure that it's targeted at addressing those. I must mention at some point in 2019, after the United Nations General Assembly event, the Honorable Minister of Humanitarian had invited the OFI, the Oxford team, the technical guys, to Nigeria. And we had sought to understand not just at national but at sub-national level. And which state did we go to? We went to Kaduna State, and the governor, Governor Erufai, welcomed the team, and he was keen to know. So if I were to, in terms of budget process, what is the situation in Southern Kaduna versus Northern Kaduna? Are they more deprived in health, in education, in one of the areas, in the regions more than the other? So that can be used to inform the budget direction.
Okay.
So the policy in terms of that helps us to be aligned to the global target of the SDG. It helps in the design of a targeted project.
Okay.
And I must mention one last thing. We have the National Social Register, which is embedded within the NASCO, the Social Safety Coordinating Office. The National Social Register, you see how it quickly came to fore when we had the pandemic. And also beyond that, we are also making sure that the people that have been captured within the MPI that we have identified as multidimensionally poor are embedded within the National Social Register. So we have the National Social Register. During the pandemic, we noticed the new poor and the urban poor. So then the Rapid Response Register was created. Now we have the MPI data that has shown us how people are even intensely poor, or how they are poor, the kind of poverty that they face. And so the merging and alignment of the MPI results and also the NSR is ongoing at the moment. So those are just a few of the conversation we've had. And of course, we look at the behavioral architecture of the citizens themselves. How is it that when government and international development partners